Button, and then it takes a second, and then it tells me we're live. Hello, welcome to Dulcimoon Talk number 42. I'm Erin May here in Kansas, and I am joined today by Roxanne McDaniel, who is sort of new to the dulcimer community, although you've been doing a lot of dulcimer playing and work for a while. And we're all just learning about all of your work and all the amazing, cool things that you do. So I'm really excited. I was saying just a minute off camera that I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you, to have a chance to sit down and share a cup of tea and learn more about your story and your life. And um, so thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I read a blog that you did for, is it the country music? What
Yeah,
was it?
the
Sorry.
Birthplace Country
The
Music
birthplace
Museum.
of country music. Yeah. And I was so struck by you talking about how the mountain dulcimer came into your life as sort of a lifeline, a lifesaver part. A lot of times we start these conversations with, how did you find the dulcimer? But when I read that, it felt like your story of how you found the dulcimer kind of started before you found the dulcimer. And so I just want you to I want you to pick up your story from whatever you feel like makes sense as a starting point to tell us about how you found the dulcimer.
Well, you see, it all started on a summer night in the 80s. But I guess to really sort of explain, sort of frame the significance of the dulcimer in my life, I do need to give a bit of background. I came from a really small town called Tazewell, Tennessee. Um, just a couple thousand people, population. Everybody knows everybody, and it's
Mhm.
not always the best when everybody knows everybody.
There are pros and cons to that for sure. I similarly grew up in a very small town in Kansas, and I understand the pros and cons
And
of small towns.
sure, and I don't want anyone to get me wrong. I love the time I spend in small towns. It's really nice sometimes to get away from sort of the rush of a larger town or the city. But I was always a little bit of a loner and an outcast at Tazewell. I never really had a place to fit in. And to just be completely frank about it and be totally open, I'm transgender. That was kind of a big problem for me growing up. I always had these feelings and didn't really know who I could express them to or what I could do about them. And I knew that attitudes in that town weren't really friendly towards people like me. But one day I finally just decided that I was going to be honest about myself and live my life as I am. And the backlash was just terrible. I couldn't even go out in public alone anymore because it wasn't safe. I had people threatening me. And through all this, the one thing that always kept me together and kept me sane was music. I'd played guitar since I was in middle school, and I wasn't a particularly good guitar player, but I liked to write songs and play what
Mhm.
I could. And I'd always been kind of vaguely aware of dulcimers, but never had the opportunity to try one. And right about this time, whenever everything was kind of falling apart for me, a friend of mine encouraged me to go back to school to study music, and they told me about the bluegrass program at East Tennessee State University.
Mhm.
I wasn't really big into bluegrass or anything like that, but I thought, it's something that I could do, and it's not classical or jazz, because those are fine, but they're not really my bag.
Mhm.
And one day I just kind of stumbled across some dulcimer videos on YouTube, and one in particular was I never know how to pronounce her last name, a Wendy
Song.
Songe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I did pronounce it correctly. Yay! That's good to get on the live stream. Playing a tune called King of the Fairies, and I remember watching that video over and over again and being so fascinated by the sound of the dulcimer. It almost had this sort of ethereal quality to it. So I got accepted to ETSU and kind of ran away from home. It was my place to run to, and got a little cheap Apple Creek dulcimer off Amazon just to see if I would like it, and I became obsessed like immediately.
Oh.
Johnson City was great, ETSU was great, but I did spend a lot of time on my own. I just hadn't got used to really being out and being open and socializing with people. So I'd just spend all day in my room just playing the dulcimer. And It kind of snowballed from there. I got a better dulcimer. I met my first dulcimer teacher there. His name's Jim Miller. I know some folks in the dulcimer community might know him. He's kind of a mad scientist of the dulcimer.
Yes, he is. I
He,
love Jim.
he taught me so much, and I looked forward to those lessons every week. It was kind of, it didn't even really seem like work. It kind of seemed like an escape from everything else. I don't have to play dulcimer. I get to play dulcimer. It was how I always looked at it. And having that sort of helped me build connections with other people, other musicians, because I finally found something that I was super interested in and that I seemed to do all right at. So it opened up a lot of connections for me and got some opportunities because one thing I always tell people that's great about being a dulcimer player is that you probably don't have a lot of competition nearby. So, so if you're a pretty good dulcimer player in your area, you're probably like the dulcimer player, at least in a smaller town like where I live.
Yeah, I started entering the National Mountain Dulcimer Contest when I was a teenager. And my sister also entered fiddle contests. And at the fiddle contest, they were like incredibly competitive. Nobody talked to each other because they were all just trying to focus on their own pieces and win the contest. And then you go over to the mountain dulcimer contest and nobody's practicing backstage. Everybody's just like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in ages. How you doing? How you been? What you working on? Oh, a new face. Who are you? Where are you from?" It's like there's not much competition, even in the most competitive space in the dulcimer world.
It's kind of funny. I was, talking about having to get away from my small town where everyone knows everyone, but it's kind of like that in the dulcimer community as well because there's just not all that many of us. But
Yeah,
I kind of like it. I've met a lot of wonderful people in the dulcimer community for sure.
yeah.
Um, Sorry if my answer was rambling there.
That was a wonderful answer. I love hearing the whole story. As a teacher, I sometimes say, um, it feels like there's so much in the world that's hard and heavy, and I don't have any ways of solving any of those problems. And sometimes teaching people to play a musical instrument doesn't feel like a very impactful way of changing the world. Um, but hearing stories like yours of like the dulcimer became the the lifeline, it became the new safe space, it became the thing that could bring you forward. Um, it's just to me really, really inspiring and heartwarming, and it reminds me of why I do all the things I do because it really does feel like if you give people opportunities to have creative outlets and tools of expression, then when there are seasons of really needing it, it's there. And so I just love that part of your story. It's so amazing to me.
Well, thank you.
So what was the Bluegrass ETSU program like? So I went to South Plains College's Bluegrass program. So and at the time that I went into that program, ETSU had Bluegrass as a minor but not a major. And still no one had ever gone through any of the Bluegrass programs with a mountain dulcimer as a an instrument. And now I think Sarah Kate went to one of the schools that has a bluegrass program, and I've been to South Plains College, and you've been to ETSU, and so there's like I see in the academic spaces a little broader kind of acceptance of the dulcimer as a legitimate instrument, which I did not experience in the classical music program. So I just would love to hear a little of like highs and lows, favorite parts of ETSU.
Well, one of my favorite parts about ETSU was the people that I met. A lot of my close friends that I have now are folks that I met there. But whenever I applied as a guitarist,
Okay.
and
Hmm.
I auditioned with an original piece because I was too lazy to learn another piece. And somehow they found it satisfactory. But I did guitar in a Celtic band for a while,
Huh?
and then I played guitar in old time as well as bass guitar in the country band. ETSU was a really good experience because, to be honest, I wasn't that good of a guitar player when I went there. One of the first things that I learned at ETSU was that I really didn't know as much as I thought I did. And I know this is going to sound weird, but sometimes you get to a point where you think you know things and you have to learn how to learn again, which sounds like some absurdism, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got to meet a lot of folks who were more open to new ideas and people from different walks of life because, everybody's coming to this school from all corners of the earth, so you kind of have to learn how to get along. I didn't play the dulcimer all that much in band ensembles. I played it one semester in an old time band, and that was pretty much it. It was kind of just my own special area of study. But one of the most wonderful experiences of being at ETSU was the opportunity that I had to finally play original material on stage. I'd never really played gigs before or performed in front of audiences,
Yeah.
and it was nice to not just get used to that, but then finally share my thoughts and ideas with people for the first time. And I wrote a bunch of pretty bad songs, but people seemed to still like them. I eventually got to a point where I was a little bit more comfortable with doing it and with writing as well. I'd say ETSU really helped me develop as a musician, but also as a person, and sort of helped me learn how to connect better with other people around me and form relationships and form communities. And that was also the place where I first, started to attempt to teach. I did a work study program, and I was a literacy tutor assigned to a local elementary school. And a lot of the other tutors would have a couple of schools they went to or a few different classes, but I always went to the same one, so I kind of became like this teacher's assistant 3 days a week. Her name is Claudette Decker, and she, such a sweet person, really gave me a lot of confidence when it came to, working with kids and working in an educational environment. And she was the one who first really encouraged me to incorporate music. She would say, bring your dulcimer to class, and play a tune or sing a song. The kids will love it. So I started bringing my dulcimer with me every morning that I worked. And, a room full of like 15 or 16 6-year-olds kind of erupts when you pull out any kind of musical instrument.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would play a tune for them at the end of class or sing a few songs, together with them. And of course, whenever it get close to the end of the year, I would prepare a bunch of Christmas music, and I would come and do like a little Christmas show for the first grade classes. And it was really, really fun. Because there was a performance element in it, and it kind of gave me a bit of experience doing that, but in a more, I guess, meaningful way. Because you get to teach people, especially young people, about music of the region and an instrument from the region. And one of the things I love about the dulcimer is the accessibility. It's really easy to just get the basics and start playing.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to have an instrument that I could let the kids try out, and they could have immediate success with it and go, oh, I can definitely do this.
Uh-huh.
That sort of plays into the other part of my work that came about right around the time of the pandemic. When the pandemic started and everything shut down, I had just quit. I know this is fast forwarding a few years, but I figure we can hop around.
Sure. Yeah.
Whenever the pandemic hit, I had been working as a preschool teacher for a few years. So this was way after I graduated ETSU. I graduated in spring of 2018. I quit being a preschool teacher because it was, it's kind of hard to just chase around a room full of 2-year-olds all day.
Yeah. My sister has a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn, and I spend like 3 days with them, and I'm like, I'm good.
The great thing about working in a preschool, though, is that you never have to worry about getting exercise because you're never going to get to sit still for one moment. The little kids always loved the dulcimer too. I always had it with me, and in the morning after we'd have breakfast, we always had to do a few songs together. And I left that job right as the pandemic was beginning, and I began another job working at the airport as a bartender. And when the pandemic came, being a bartender at the airport wasn't exactly a secure job. So I ended up spending a lot of time at home. But I always tell people that the pandemic was a weird time because on one side it was terrible and it was horrifying, and I was afraid to even leave the house. But on the other hand, I did find a lot of free time to just sit and work on my craft, and that's largely what I did, because if I didn't throw myself into something, I'm sure I would have just gone mad. It seemed like the world was ending.
Yeah.
During that time, I met a man named Don Berger who lived over in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And I first reached out to him in late 2019 and asked about, coming and playing with his dulcimer circle that I'd heard about. And the first time that I went, it was at the time that people were starting to wear masks. So we only got to meet a couple of times, and then everything moved to online. That was actually where I first started using Zoom. I've not really used Zoom much since the pandemic. But, he kind of became sort of like a grandfather figure to me. And he and his wife Deborah were very kind, very supportive. They introduced me to a lot of people they knew, and the music room where he had had his dulcimer circle changed to being a sort of little quasi-venue where we would set up live streams and broadcast. We tried to highlight dulcimer players, of course, and do live streams sort of like this. We'd broadcast to YouTube and Facebook and have a live chat going, and we'd have a virtual tip jar and all that. And it was just a way for local musicians and dulcimer players to have a place to go and play a gig. We would always put them up in this little cabin that we had in town, and that way there was some tiny sliver of normalcy somewhere. And I got to meet a few interesting dulcimer players through that, and also got to uh, highlight a few local people that I really thought a lot of. Also got the opportunity to reconnect with some old friends during that time. There's a couple of people named Reva and Keegan. They're very good friends of mine, and they had been playing as a duo, playing like Scottish and Irish fiddle tunes. And during the pandemic, I reached out to them, and we'd known each other at ETSU, but never really spent much time together. So I had them come out and do a gig, and it was really great. And we kind of reconnected through that. And sometime later, whenever I decided that I was going to start trying to be a songwriter and make a career out of it, I reached out to Reva and asked if she would play fiddle just to fill out my songs a bit so it wouldn't be so plain. And she said, sure. So we started playing as a duo, and I remember our first gig was playing for a fundraiser picnic here at a park in Johnson City. And there were like 12 people there, and the sound system was, I think the sound system might have just been a karaoke machine, honestly.
Uh-huh.
It was a pretty no frills gig. That's another thing. These little things that happen bit by bit, they're like little seeds that are planted, and they grow into bigger and bigger things. Because me doing the music room came out of me meeting Dawn, and me doing the music room led to me reconnecting with my old friends, and that kind of led to me deciding to, hey, I'm going to actually make an attempt to do something with this. But also through meeting Dawn, I met another man named Brian who runs a nonprofit named Art Transforms. And Dawn had had this idea to get a bunch of these cardboard dulcimer kits and do a summer school program where kids would get to receive these kits for free and decorate them and build them and have their own instrument, at no cost to them. And a lot of the children that we served were from underserved communities. They might come from difficult, home lives, or might be in, poverty.
Mhm.
And Dawn said, well, I've got the person to do that. And I kind of just got plucked up and plugged into this program. And the first year that I did it, I was really overwhelmed. I, I had never, I'd never put any kind of instrument together, even if it is just a kit and it's cardboard,
Uh-huh.
especially with a room full of very, very excited, like fourth graders.
Uh-huh.
They're all
Uh-huh.
excited and they want to do everything, and I'm not 100% sure what all there is to do, so I'm kind of figuring it out while doing crowd control at the same time. But the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. They loved it. The school really loved it. The administration loved it. They're like, oh, we got to have this again. And the program that I work for, there's also a storytelling class and a class where kids make, clay and pottery, things like that.
Mhm. So was it like an after school or a summer school kind of setting?
It was in a summer school. We would meet with the third grade and the fourth grade every morning from like 10 to 11.
Hmm.
And they would have specials during summer school, and our three classes were just, three of the available specials. And it's grown a little bit since then because during the regular school year, we also do after school visits then.
Nice.
And a lot of it is revolved around the dulcimer because, that's kind of become my thing. And last year, I was really fortunate to have been selected for one of those tradition bearers grants that Central Appalachian Living Traditions did. They gave out 8 individual grants, and a few of my friends encouraged me to do it, and I thought this will never happen. And I applied for it, and the date for the grant came and went. The date they would notify you if you got it.
Mhm.
And I didn't get the email, and I thought, well, shoot, it didn't work. And I was in Spokane, Washington, because Reva and Keegan were getting married. And I was riding in the back of the car, and we were going to Walmart. And I get a phone call, and it's our friend Tyler Hughes. He's the director of the Crooked Road music organization in Virginia. Sorry, I keep listing all these names. I just feel like it's really important to mention all these people because they were all
Yeah.
so wonderful. But he called me and said I wanted to congratulate you personally because we decided to award you one of these grants. And I was kind of almost had a little anxiety attack. I thought, oh gosh, I actually got it. Now I've actually got to do something. So I bought I bought as many cardboard dulcimer kits as I could afford with the money,
Yeah.
and I reached out to a bunch of local nonprofits and schools and various organizations and said, hey, I've got all this money that I've just got to give away. Can I do an after school program and do dulcimer building with you? So I did one at a few nonprofits here in town. I did one over at there's a Christian after school program in the city that hired us to come do that. We'd been doing after school stuff with Art Transforms. And when I got the grant, I made an offer to them and they said, oh, please do. So we did that. And we also did a class for adults at the Birthplace, a country music museum in Bristol. Because my whole thing is I really like working with people of all ages. It's great to work with kids, but I really enjoy working with adults and seniors as well. I do I do dulcimer classes at the local senior center, and it's really great because there's just as much joy for me to help somebody who's much older than me, who's always wanted to learn an instrument,
Mhm.
finally find something that works for them, and show them, hey, you can totally do it at any age. It's never too late.
Mhm.
It's I also get the same kind of joy, working with, kids and saying, here's this great instrument, and maybe you've tried another instrument and it didn't work out for you, but I think you'll find this is a lot of fun. And they get involved with it and they find out that they can get the basics of it, and then that leads to them, usually they stick with it if they enjoy it. And even if they don't become a dulcimer player, or if they decide that another instrument is more suitable for them, or even if they just find a new appreciation for music, any of those outcomes to me is a good outcome
Right.
because music can be so important, especially especially if you find yourself, struggling with things. We struggle with all sorts of things, whether we're too old to do something we always wanted to do, or don't have the ability. Like I've had a dulcimer student who was missing a finger, and her thing was, I can't play guitar and I can't do this, and I'm like, I bet you can. I bet we can get it, and we totally work things out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to use humor, in classes. I don't like to be too serious, but I don't want to be flippant either. But she said, I'm missing a finger. And I'm like, well, the dulcimer's only got 3 strings. You've got a string for each finger. It's perfect. Let's go. and and it worked. It worked. She really enjoyed herself. And likewise, I've also worked with people who had like arthritis and they couldn't play guitar. I remember working with one gentleman who he had been a guitar player when he was younger, and arthritis kind of left him without the ability to play anymore, and he wanted to find a new instrument. And he really got into dulcimer in a big way. And it's been a while since I saw him, but I hope wherever he is and whatever he's doing, he's having a good time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a powerful instrument because like you said, the entry point to it is easy. It's got that like low barrier entry point, and the exploration that can come out of it is just kind of endless. One of the things I'm always curious about is people's like creative process. So you're a songwriter and you're a player and you're a teacher and you were telling me you've got a band and you've got recording projects in the works. So I wonder like what are the kind of creative practices, or like do you have a process that helps you get into songwriting, or do you have like for is it like I sit down and then ideas are just there and I grab hold of them, or what's your process like?
It's a mix. It could be anything. Sometimes the sort of initial seed for a song gets planted in different ways. It's usually one of three ways. Either either I'll just have an idea for a line or a phrase that I think sounds nice, and I'll just write it down and have no idea how I'm going to use it, but just hold on to it for later. That actually plays into the name of the album. I'll talk about that in a bit. But or I'll be noodling on the dulcimer or one of the other instruments and come up with some little melody line and start humming and not really have any words, but just be like, something could definitely go over that.
Mhm.
Or one of the more fun ways is I live alone, so I'm always singing to myself without having to worry about annoying somebody. And I'm always thinking about the most ridiculous stuff. Like I just narrate what I'm doing, like I'll be putting on the kettle to make a cup of tea, and it suddenly becomes a blues song about how I'm putting on the kettle. I woke up this morning, I put on the kettle, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually I'll be like, if I put good words in that, that might be a song. And that's how those are usually like the three most common ways that sort of songs get started in my mind.
That's awesome. I love that. So I wonder if there are any like kind of universal favorite songs among the kids and adults that you've worked with. Do you have favorites that are like, if I pull out this song, it's always a win?
Yeah, there's one tune, and I have to use different names for it depending on, where I'm at. Uh, I have a really simple, very beginner-friendly arrangement of Whiskey Before Breakfast, and that's a tune that everybody knows. And, all the grown-ups and all the old folks know it. And I liked it because it was not just fun, but really simple. And I thought, well, this would be a great tune to play with the kids, but I can't really go and play a tune called Whiskey Before Breakfast with kids. So I found out that apparently sometimes it's also known under the title of The Scotsman. So I said, great, we're going to call it The Scotsman, and everything will just be fine. And that's that's one tune. I know whenever we just wrapped up summer school last week, doing another one of these projects, we played that tune a lot. And every day, whenever we'd get the dulcimers back out, one of the kids, without fail, would go, "Oh, can we play the Scotsman today? Can we just play the Scotsman today?"
Oh,
And I said, "Well, no. We'll have to play at least one other one." But they really enjoy that one. And boil them cabbage down is always okay for a first tune, but I always tell people it's like the smoke on the water of dulcimer music. It's like the first thing anybody learns.
yeah.
So I always I'll play it over and over again, and every time I'll try to challenge everybody, now play it this way or do this thing. I always joke and say we need to season this cabbage because it's pretty bland. But those are the two tunes that I use a lot.
Yeah. Nice. So you want to tell us some about your band work and your recording work?
Of course. Well, I've got a band. We're called Roxanne and the Big Bad Buzz, and we've got a Facebook page and everything. Just like a real band. And the name came from the back of a Monster Energy can. We couldn't think of a band name, and we wanted to go with Roxanne and the something. And Riva texted me one day with a picture of the back of an energy drink, and it said, "It's the drink that gives you a big bad buzz." And she goes, "Hear me out." And I said, "Well, I don't necessarily hate it." And then we kind of went with it for a couple of gigs, and then I ordered T-shirts that said it, so I guess that's our name. Uh, we I've been trying to record an album several times over the last few years, and I was always trying to do it alone and do everything. It's not easy. That's one of the great things about the dulcimer is it made it easier for me to kind of make those connections and meet a lot of people, and I didn't have to do all these things by myself anymore. And after failing to record this album several times, I just kind of thought, well, it's not really going to be a thing. So a few months back, we'd been a band for a while. It kind of built. It started out as a duo, me and Reva, and then her husband Keegan joined in, and then Keegan's friend Jamie joined in on bass, and then last year we hired a drummer, and it's great. It's working out really, really well, and we decided we were just going to go into the studio and record it live in the studio. Do minimal overdubs, if any, which, if any, I'm totally, lying there. I totally had to do a few overdubs because I just wasn't satisfied with some things. But
Oh, yes. Uh-huh. Do you have a stronger perfectionist voice in the studio than you do when you're in other places?
only when it comes to the vocals, because like
Okay.
somebody else will play some little thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's great, that's wonderful, I love that. And then I'll sing something, and then I'll pick it apart and go, this is absolute trash. We've got to dump this, and they'll all be going, it's fine. What's wrong with you? But the other great thing about having this whole band is now that we've got a drummer, our drummer's name's Davey. There are a lot of things that we can do that we couldn't do before. There are some songs on the album that we tried to play without a drummer, and it just didn't work. It needed that extra,
Mhm.
something to keep it going. But it's got 10 songs on it. They're all originals that I wrote. The oldest one goes back to about the time that I was needing to leave Tazewell, during that whole time when my life was sort of a big tumultuous mess. It's a song called The Watershed, and that's the name of the album. And that kind of goes in with, you were talking about how I write things and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll just pick a word that I like or a title that I like and go, oh, I should write a song called this. And that's what happened with The Watershed. One day I was just sitting around, as you do, and thinking, you know what word I really like? Watershed. No reason. So I thought I'd try to write a song, and I did. But I'm I'm really pleased with it. It's so much different than how I originally envisioned it, because I originally envisioned it having a bit more of a rock edge.
Mhm.
But going to ETSU and meeting a bunch of friends who play country and bluegrass music, everything becomes really country really fast. So I just I tell everybody that I became the reluctant country singer, but now I wouldn't trade it for any other thing. It works just fine.
Yeah, yeah. Do you play dulcimer guitar on it?
Both. There are, I think there are at least 4 songs that use the dulcimer. I think there's 5 guitar songs, 4 dulcimer songs, and 1 ukulele song as well.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
I don't consider myself too much of a ukulele player. The only reason I play it is because Don, the guy who got me involved with all the education work, he used to be the ukulele player at the community center, and he recommended me for the job when he left, and I didn't know how to play ukulele, so they offered me the job because he recommended me, and I'm like, yeah, but I'll need to start next month. So I took like the next few weeks to just learn how to play, ukulele chords. I'm like, I can totally trick people into thinking I can play ukulele, and eventually I got to where I kind of enjoyed it. Do a bit of writing with that.
Yeah, I kind of accidentally learned how to play ukulele when I got asked to help lead a ukulele choir at a church. And I was
Yeah.
like, sure, I can do that. And they were expecting 7 or 8 people, and then 50 people signed up. And
Oh
I
my.
quickly had to learn how to write parts for ukulele. And I was like, oh, what am I doing? But I feel similarly. It's just a fun
That,
instrument.
that sounds so much like work. Yeah. You know, you were talking about playing at a church. I made a really good church connection through the music room and through Dawn. I met a really wonderful songwriter named Alan Huff, who's the pastor over at local Presbyterian church. And whenever he heard me play dulcimer, he said, "Oh, you got to come to our church and play dulcimer for our service." And I grew up in a church, and it was always a big part of my life as a child. And I kind of got ran off when I came of age, and people found out about me. So for a long time, I was kind of hesitant to go back to a church. I thought,
Mhm.
last time I was there, it didn't go so great. But yeah, I went and played dulcimer for these folks, and they were just all about it. And they've, kind of always been there on the peripheral ever since and invited me back and all that stuff. And that's the other thing that I like about the dulcimer is not only did it make connections, it made connections for me in places that I didn't think I could get, before. It's helped me connect with either communities that I didn't think I could be a part of, or it's helped me build bridges with people who might not necessarily see things the same way as me.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people I'm kind of in an odd position. I've got a foot in each world. I'm trans, which is kind of a lot of people consider a very modern, progressive sort of thing. And then I'm playing a lot of like old time and traditional music and doing a lot of work, about preserving Appalachian heritages and culture.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting sort of dichotomy there. I kind of feel like a blend of old and new.
Yeah. Yeah. I wondered about that because my experience of the dulcimer community and the bluegrass and old time community has been by and large really welcoming. Now, I say that by and large part because there's always pockets where there's some like clique behavior or there's some exclusive kind of behavior, but overall it's been a really like rich, warm, embracing kind of community for me. But I also kind of check all of the boxes of like looking like I fit into the community. And I I feel like I just want to commend your courageousness in coming in with like um not trying to just blend in, which I think from the outside looking in, like it looks like it would be possible for you to just come in and not tell people I'm trans and this is part of my identity. The
And
courage it takes to come in with the fullness of all of that into a community where
and
historically the like traditional ideas have been really pervasive. I wonder how that has felt if you want to talk about it a little more.
I always choose my avenues where to talk about it or where to express it because
Yeah.
it's not really at the forefront of what I do. You know, I know there's a lot of controversy about trans people being involved in education and especially working with children. Let's just be honest; it's a point of contention. But I never discuss it in the classroom because it's not relevant to my music teaching. With
That's right. Yeah.
sometimes at the senior center, because I have a few people at the senior center who know me outside, and we'll talk about things in our life, and then I kind of just talk it as sort of a personal conversation. But I do want to kind of emphasize, for the sake of other people's, you know, comfort and my own, because I don't want to deal with a bunch of angry people making assumptions. But it's certainly not part of my classroom work at all.
Yeah.
I do use that though whenever I'm dealing with the community at large because I want to I want to put forward a good face for the trans community.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of people have formed opinions about us based on very limited experience or very limited or skewed information. And sometimes it's easy to forget that no matter what community you're looking at or what walk of life people come from, you've got all sorts of folks in each one of those demographics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got you've got trans folks who are very much lean one way or very much lean another way themselves. So we're not a monolith. And I know that other communities aren't.
Mhm.
But I try to be a good representative for the trans community and show the outside world, hey, we're just people. If you come and spend time with me, it's not that you're coming and hanging out with Roxanne, the transgender person. You're hanging out with Roxanne, the musician, and the teacher. Just the local person down the street. She also happens to be trans. Just be aware of that. And
Right.
don't
It's just one of
don't
the pieces.
don't. It's like don't please don't base your opinion or your judgments on me based on that one little piece of my identity.
Mhm.
I think I think sometimes it's just a lack of familiarity.
Mhm.
And with the way things are online on social media these days, people can be so angry and so abrasive and so toxic sometimes, and it's easy because we kind of live in this constant barrage of information and opinions, and it's really easy to get overwhelmed and frustrated and angry. But on the other side of that, not only do I want to be a good representative for the trans community to the outside world, I also want to turn around and be able to show my community, the LGBT community, hey, we don't have to be cutting ourselves up, from this. If you want to go, square dancing or play old time music or go to these certain circles that some people might consider more traditional or more this, that, or the other thing, there's totally a space for us there. Like you were saying earlier about how the bluegrass and the old time community had been so welcoming. So it's kind of nice to be able to face both directions and say, we can fit in here, and also you guys should just probably get to know us. We might be worth your time. There's a shop in downtown Johnson City. I hope that the graphic is still on the window, but I've not gone down that street in a while. There's this message on the window that says people are harder to hate close up, and I've found that to be very true because just like there are people who don't like me because of what kind of ideas they might have about what trans people are like, there were also communities that I had hard feelings towards or felt suspicious of or wary of because of my previous experiences.
Mhm.
And the dulcimer and traditional music really helped tear down that wall because suddenly I found people who, on paper, we should be totally at each other's throats, calling each other names on Facebook, all that kind of stuff.
Right, right.
And through this kind of music and this kind of work, I've met so many people who I otherwise might have not given a chance myself,
Mhm.
and and learned a lot about the judgments that I made about others, and it really helped me grow as a person as well. So, I do all these things, but it's not 100% selfless because I've benefited from it as well. We all can benefit from doing this sort of thing and working together like that.
Yeah. When
And
community works well, we're all
yeah,
becoming better humans together.
yeah. I like
Yeah.
to think that there's a space somewhere for everyone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. DJ and I have been having a lot of conversations about that recently of just um we didn't know when we started Dulcimoon that part of the work of Dulcimoon would be pulling people into the community.
Mhm.
And through this process of having conversations with people and hearing stories and learning about all the different ways that people come into playing the mountain dulcimer or the hammer dulcimer, these like kind of weird, kind of off the beaten path instruments. They every single person has this like really amazing, unique, totally different from anyone else's story of how they got here. And then there's this like expansiveness that can happen when we go, yeah, we all want all of you in this space. And I am really excited about actually the like future of the dulcimer community because I think the online connections and the ways I'm seeing expansive community existing because we all look at each other and say, "Oh, you play that instrument. That's really cool." And then we ask other questions, but we've already started from this point of like, "I like you because you play the same instrument as me," you know? And then we can make space for our differences from that point of connection instead of starting from the point of we're not the same. And so thank you for sharing all of that. It's feels really beautiful.
It's been such a joy to be part of it and to be involved with all this.
So, in kind of wrapping up and tying a neat little bow on all of this, how do people find you, Roxanne, if they want to check out more about your music and
Well, I don't have a website, at least not yet. I've been lazy about that. But you can find my band on Facebook. The page is Roxanne and the Big Bad Buzz. And then, of course, I've got my own page on Facebook. Just my personal page is also my business page. If you just find me at Roxanne McDaniel, I'll be the I'll be the only dulcimer player named Roxanne McDaniel that I know of. I'm,
Fantastic. Do you have a YouTube channel or things,
I do.
places?
I've got a YouTube channel as well. I don't keep it as updated as I would like to, but it's just under Roxanne McDaniel.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, I think all of the work that you're doing in schools, in building cardboard dulcimers, in collaborations and recording and working with the senior center, it's all so amazing. I've been admiring you from afar for a while, so I'm really excited that we got a chance to talk and connect and hear more of your story. And thank you for sharing so vulnerably and beautifully with us.
Thank you very much.
Let's keep in touch, and I can't wait to know. Let us know for sure when your album comes out. We'll post about it in the Dulcimoon group and stuff
Oh,
too.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep you updated.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thanks, friends. We'll see you next time for another Dulcimoon talk. Bye.